Welcome to Cooking with Madho. Today I take you to the Latin section of Jackson Heights. I'll be showing you Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, the cuisine of these countries. And we're going to start off by showing you a boundary which is like from the 84th Street, and we're going straight onto the 75th Street, and then we'll see where that takes us. My first stop is Cinco de Mayo. The title of this grocery, that is Mexican, commemorates the Zapotec leader of Mexico's successful warding off of French attempts at imperialism in 1862. The grocery shows a lot of limes, guayaba or guava, pineapple, papaya, the fruits that have made Mexico popular throughout the world. We see berries and apples that Mexico's climate, that is semi-temperate and somewhat tropical, enables. Mexico's high altitude mountains is also very good for the growing of strawberries, but the long beans are popular, have been entrenched in the culture, as are the jalapenos, used in a lot of cooking. Jalapeno is hotter than a regular sweet pepper but milder than a Scotch bonnet. Meanwhile, the tomatillo, seen on the left, is popular and is used to create sauces that are added to burritos, to frijoles, to enchiladas, to tamales. Very popular with tamales. And it looks like a tomato but isn't. So it's very interesting to see all these mangoes that Mexico also produces. The Mexican variety of avocado is not popular in the West Indies, but is actually easier to mass produce and has been used successfully as an export to North America, along with bananas. And what you'll notice here is that Mexico seems to have a lot of produce that we are familiar with in the West Indies, like yuca or cassava, escallion, and definitely Mexico uses herbs that include the celery and coriander, as seen, along with eating a lot of beetroot and cacti for health reasons. Mexicans seem to be putting a lot of focus on fresh fruit. But ironically, they're also a society with meats coming from its Spanish colonial era. I do not eat meat, but I do appreciate the fact that Mexico has other options in cooking vegetables and also in enjoying a variety of fruit that are converted into pulp and also converted into sweets. Mexico is not the land of rotis, but the land of tortillas. Tortillas are traditionally made with maize or masa, and you could also get tortillas made with regular flour, albeit cheaper and less in demand. Mexico is also a hub for candy and soft drinks. So some people think Cinco de Mayo's store is like a celebration store, catering for a lot of festivals and parties, and there's an element of truth to that, even inherent in the name. But we could see that a lot of these biscuits and these snacks seem to be rivaling Western products that we are not very familiar with. Tortillas are to Mexico what roti is to India, a staple, and they're made out of maize, masa, or whole wheat flour. There are also spirits popular in Mexico, but I love its celebration of death even in Dia de los Muertos. And the masks represent ancestral spirits, and we see saints that are worshipped, very common, like the Virgin Mary. So this store has it all, and when you leave, you even see sugarcane. Into the Mexican bakery, we see a lot of cakes and breads. I thought this was so beautiful, I just wanted to point it out because it convinced me that many cultures are very good at making cakes. So this Latin-dominated neighborhood offers and caters for the Latinos and Americans who would just want what seems to them to be regular food. The side streets are packed with fruit vendors, with smoothie vendors, and even with massage parlors. There can be no denying the presence of these Latinos in this section of New York. But what I noticed that I liked was their adaptability to posting tents and restaurant sheds on the outside for people who were unvaccinated. We passed a native Indian shop. I admire the fact that many of the Mexican, Ecuadorian, and Colombian restaurants that we passed have placed tents and outside facilities for the non vaccinated. And we reach the end of a borderline here where we see the Mexican flag and we see a lot of vendors selling tamale at this strip or corner. And the tamales tend to be very cheap and they cater for working class Latinos. When you move away from all these Mexican stores here, like this one on the side of the road where the lady is making tamales, and you notice the dozens or perhaps hundreds of people on the streets working hard, it makes you appreciate the fact that unlike what Donald Trump said, Mexicans are not really bad hombres, and that immigrants have a beautiful story of enduring a dignified struggle against the harsh realities of migration life. There can be no denying that immigrants work really hard in the city of New York, and this is seen in the food hype. But it's not just Mexicans, it's Colombians and Ecuadorians. And Ecuador has some very good food, churning out some hot dishes like frioles for the working class, carpenters and construction workers. Food seems to concentrate on a lot of frioles or beans that are not curried but rather stewed along with meat and having sides like pineapple or rather plantain and salsas seem to be a norm in South America. At least this is what I've noticed. So the Ecuadorian community is also popular and they have a huge following, not just with the food truck that I've showed you, but in the restaurant scene. And things are really picking up pace even in the COVID era. There's a grand opening of a restaurant that is Colombian and Ecuadorian. And move over House of Pancakes, here comes House of Chicken. But I decided to visit a Colombian cafe, seen here. The food is very similar in terms of stews to what you see in Jamaica and Trinidad, but I love the Colombian coffee and my bread with cheese. And I thought that this store did a very good job of having a variety of pastries. And the pastries were not from a South American indigenous culture. No, they were actually mainly from Spain or France. So there's change. Most of these pastries are sweet and made out of cocoa and coffee beans, which are relatively cheaper to find in this section of New York. The bakery scene in Colombia seems to indicate a colonial past and inspiration from European cooking and European baking. So that's very interesting that they have such varieties that seem to be, again, like the cakes that you would have in the South Caribbean. And it begs the question about who's really inspiring this process. Fruit smoothies were everywhere on the streets of Jackson Heights, and even in this bakery, they seem to specialize in a lot of fruits. But I would be naive in hyping the Mexican and Latino community without acknowledging that Jackson Heights is also a pillar hub for the Himalayan community and is now called Himalayan Heights, with a lot of Tibetan and Nepalese restaurants taking over the space originally organized by the Indians. So the Himalayans have kind of they've entered New York in a big way, escaping poverty and capturing a tremendous opportunity in what is Diversity Plaza, seen here. A lot of Bengali restaurants also, to an extent. Jackson Heights has transformed itself from being a white middle-class neighborhood in the early 1900s that was planned to take people out of Manhattan. Jackson Heights Roosevelt Avenue was originally a white neighborhood catering for middle-class people who wanted to get out of Manhattan in the early 1900s, but it then evolved to accepting Indians after the passage of the Nationality Act by Lyndon B. Johnson. When you look at Jackson Heights and you consider the immense level of Latino presence and Spanish-speaking peoples of the Americas, you're left wondering, is this what America wants for itself, to be a land of diversity? No guarantee of success, but a promise of opportunity? It might be. At ground zero, Diversity Plaza, there's a lot of conscientious attempt to recruit people for COVID testing, and clinical tests are provided for free. And this community has always engaged in outreach, Free Palestine movement, peace movements, anti-war protests. This community is not one thing, it's not one experiment. It moved from being a white middle-class neighborhood to Indian, to Asian, to Latino. Jackson Heights, is it that out of many, one? Does every creed and race truly find an equal place? You decide and visit, but the food makes you wonder and appreciate the lighter moments. In my next episode, I show you Indian grocery shopping, and I'll highlight a lot of spices, herbs, and face washes so that you could look like a Bollywood star. See you soon. Adavars fir milenge. Khudafiz. Chal gayo. Bye bye.